MotionBuilder deals with animation, and animation involves time. If you want to work with animation data, you need to have a means of representing time in a way that's precise and consistent. And for MotionBuilder, that's the FBTime class. Let's look at an arbitrary point in time, say 1 second. You'll notice that the internal value for 1 second is an arbitrary-looking number, somewhere around 46 billion. FBTime uses a long or a 64-bit integer as its internal data type. What this means is that you could have a take that lasted a few years, and you'd be able to refer to any point in that take with the precision of 1/46 billionth of a second, or 2% of a nanosecond. Anyway, now that we have this FBTime object, we can access its internal value by calling the get method. Similarly, we can modify the internal value directly with the set method. Here we've changed our time to represent 3.5 seconds. We can convert an FBTime to more conventional formats with a number of methods. GetSecondDouble expresses the time as a floating point number representing the total number of seconds. GetMilliseconds gives us the same thing, but in integer form and truncated to thousandths of a second. If we want to get a plain old frame number for this time, we can use getFrame. The first argument to getFrame, which is false by default, allows us to specify whether we want a cumulative value or just the number of frames remaining after the last whole second. But there's an ambiguity here. How many frames is 3.5 seconds? Well, that entirely depends on the frame rate. To specify a frame rate explicitly, we can pass in an FBTime mode value. If you omit this argument, it'll just default to the current playback frame rate. That's fine in some cases, but if it's important to have your frame numbers expressed in a certain way, you'll want to be explicit. If we want to create a new FBTime based on a frame number, we need to make the same consideration. Here we're using a different constructor for FBTime to give us a value representing 30 frames. This constructor takes 5 integers. In order, they represent hours, minutes, seconds, frames, and fields. A field in this context is half of a frame. As with getFrame, this constructor allows us to pass in an FBTime mode to give specific meaning to our frame and field numbers. Now that we know how to work with FBTime, let's look at some of its most common uses. One obvious instance is the playback position. Officially, this is called local time. We can read that value from fbsystem.localTime. If we want to change the current local time, we use the FBPlayerControl class. Like FBSystem, this is a global object which we can access just by calling its constructor. To set the playback time, we use the goTo method. Aside from this, there are a number of other methods of FBPlayerControl that mirror the buttons you see in the transport controls. They include goToStart, goToEnd, play, stop, and the properties isPlaying and isRecording. Lastly, you can also use FBPlayerControl to get and set the frame rate for playback. One other common use of FBTime is for the start and end points of the take. This is a property of the FBTake class called the local timespan, and it's an FBTimeSpan object. FBTimeSpan is just a class that contains 2 FBTime values, a start time and a stop time. So to get the frame range of the current take, we can do this. FBSystem.currentTake.localTimespan.getStart.getFrame true. And the same thing for the stop frame. To set the frame range for the take, we assign a new FBTimeSpan value to local timespan. Here we're setting the frame range from 2000 to 5000. Those are the basics for working with time. With this knowledge, we can now start to talk about changing properties over time. In other words, animation. For the time being, though, thanks for watching.